Hello, everyone. First of all, I would like to say thank you so much for giving me this opportunity and the time to come and to share my experience and my photography with all of you. And thank you for the such great introductions. I really appreciate it. As Manu Chair said, I was very young when I came to photography, and to be honest, without knowing much about photography, I heard about the organization AINA, which Manu Chair and Reza Dikhati funded, and I heard about this class about photojournalism, and I didn't know much about it, and I thought that it is related to journalism, so it may help me in the future to learn or to get to journalism faculty where I can learn how to write about my experience and what's happening, especially to the women in my community. So I went. And to be honest, yes, I was very shy, and I wasn't actually sure that I will be selected, because I knew that so much with becoming part of something, you have to have connection. I know no one. So I just fill out the form, and there was a selection process. And after selection, yes, there was the interview that we had. And the time that I saw the final result that was announced, and I saw my name in the result, actually I was so shocked, and I was so happy, and couldn't wait for the classes to start. And once we start the classes, and we start from looking photograph at the very beginning, I remember. And as I was learning about photography and looking the picture of a very well-known photographer, and also a picture of Reza Dikhati and Manu Chair Dikhati and everyone. So day by day, I start falling in love with photography, and I made a decision to continue photography. So for the rest, I think I can share my screen so that people can also see some of my photograph as I talk. Let me just do that. Okay. So yeah, as I was learning about photography, sorry, I was just wanted to. I think I can. As I was learning about photography, I was falling in love. At the time, I was in high school. I was in 10th grade, and to continue with my classes in photography, so I decided to go as part-time for my school classes, because I wanted to focus more on photography. So for the 11th grade and 12th grade, I studied by myself the high school, and I just went for the exams so that I could have enough time to focus on the classes. And also, it was very shortly after a few months, we started working for different magazines and newspaper, all inside and outside Afghanistan. And so the main reason, as Manu Chair mentioned, was is to be wanted to, at the time, I wanted to really share what especially what Afghans were going through, especially Afghan women. So I start focusing on the problems that the Afghan women were facing every day. And one of the stories at the time that I worked was burqa. And at the time, burqa was really becoming as a symbol for an international media. So every story, everything that you will see from Afghanistan. So there had to be a picture of burqa. And for me, for me, one of the reasons that I wanted, because there was a huge demand in such images, but also because during Taliban regime, I was forced to wear burqa. And I remember one day that one experience that I was not wearing burqa, and what happened. It was the first year of Taliban that I was going to a hospital, and I was with my dad to visit someone. And then we were walking on one side of the road, and then in another side of the road, a car stopped, a white Corolla, I never forget. And a guy came out of the car and walked towards me. And as he was walking towards me, I could see the way that he was looking at me. And I told my dad, why this guy is walking towards me and looking like this to me, at me. And my mom said, just keep walking, don't look at him. So as he got close to me, he took out an electricity cable and then start beating me. So immediately I turned my back. So he hit 3-4 times, I think, in my back, and told me, "Mehdi Potika." So, which means it was because I was not wearing a burqa. I was wearing a scarf, but I was not wearing a burqa. So that experience, that what happened that day was very something for me, that I had to say that for 22 years after that, I was getting these nightmares because of that. So that experience and the fact that there was desire, it kind of becomes something for me to wanted to see what is really about this burqa. So I start to work in a story in a bit deeper to see why women are wearing the burqa, and how difficult it is to wear the burqa. And I remember those days that after I was beaten, I have to say I didn't start wearing it for another 2 years, but after 2 years I had to wear it, because I was going to secret schools, because Taliban abandoned girls to going to school. So I was going to secret school, and because of the school that I was going, and then also, of course, I was getting taller. At the time I was beaten was 13, and then I was like 15 years old or something when I started wearing it, and it was very difficult to wear it. I hardly could see, and it was very difficult. It was hurting my eyelashes, and it was giving me headaches. And as you see this image in the screenshot, it is the image through the eye part of the burqa that basically trying to show my experience, how I was seeing burqa. And then also in this image, as you see, that how difficult it is to breathe, and when you're wearing a burqa, especially in the summertime, it's very difficult. And of course, as I was working in this story, there was different provinces that women were wearing burqa, and different colors that women were wear burqa. In northern part of Afghanistan, which is Mazar, as you see in this image, women, especially the ones that they just get married, so they wear a white burqa. It's very common there. And as you see in this image, which is in one of the very famous shrines in Mazar, this women in white burqa. This is also Mazar. It's an Aruz celebration that where women and men gather in this shrine, and so women will be in one side and men will be another side, so celebrating the new year, which is for us going to be very soon, actually, March 21st. Yes, of course. I mean, like one of the things that as I was working in the burqa story, that we realized that no matter like even if the women are forced or are asked to wear burqa, so they keep this fashion under this burqa, and I photographed this woman in Kabul and market, and then later when I came home, I realized actually she was my neighbor. For kids also, it's very difficult to see, sometimes to recognize their mothers when they are wearing burqa. This is shops that women come and buy burqa for themselves, and um, this is also Kabul, a demonstration. This is a shrine. Women are came for praying. This is in a refugee camp. For burqa, it's one thing that the way that it's made, and the way we also look at that, the way that the process, the entire process. It used to be different material that they had to wash it each time, and there is, as you see, there is some plates in the burqa. So these plates used to be given by hand, one by one, before, and then they had to dry it, as you see in this image. Shows the very traditional way that they are drying after they're plating the burqa. But later, after a few, I mean, like I would say, during, especially during the Taliban regime, so this new fabric came to Afghanistan from China, that they didn't have to do that process. So it was making it easier for women to just wash it and have the plate all the time there. So yeah, this was one of the story that I worked on, and we were, when we were like working in this story, we were asking women why they are wearing burqa, and we want to see that if they are making a choice to wear it, to wear the burqa, or if they are forced. It was very different comments. Some were saying that we are forced to wear it, we don't want to wear it, we are having a hard time, and some would say that we are. I'm wearing, actually, a few say that we feel safe with it, and some were saying that, oh, I used to not wear it, but then when I was forced to wear it, now I can just go out without burqa. And to be honest, my experience was like that too. After I started wearing burqa, when the Taliban were defeated, and then women were no longer forced to wear it when they were going to public. So I had such a hard time to stop wearing it also. I remember my first experience after I went to a English a course. I wanted to start an English class, and when I enter a room, I wanted to take out the front part of the burqa, and when I did that, the room was full of men, and I was there. And then the first time that when I opened the front part of the burqa so that I could talk, I was shaking. I was shaking so badly that for several minutes I couldn't control that to stop the shaking. And and then I wanted to leave it, but I couldn't also myself to leave it. And then my uncle and my family, I talked to them, and they said it's okay, you can start with a bigger scarf, and then no, don't worry, whenever you're ready. And then slowly I was able to stop wearing burqa. So this was one of the stories that I work at the very beginning of my job. But As I was studying at INA, I start, as I mentioned before, I start also to work for international media and some local magazines and newspapers. And I remember it was 2004 when I first I got my first assignment with Agency France Press. I started working with AFP, and at the time I was working as a part-time at AFP. So when I went to AFP and started taking pictures, I realized that the images that I was taking when I was at AFP was quite different with a lot of the images that agency before were using. Because I was a woman, I was able to get access easier to women, and my interest was also women. So I was focusing a lot in women. And after a while, even though I was working as a part-time at AFP, I got an offer from Associated Press for a full-time job to work with Associated Press. So after it was 2007 when I switched from AFP and I started working as a full-time photographer for Associated Press. But during the time that I was working as a part-time for AFP, I was also working as a freelance photographer for some other magazine. At that time, my first assignment, which actually was through INA, was for Sunday Times magazine and some other international magazines in Europe, USA, and different countries. So when I start working as a full-time for Associated Press, at the time I finished high school, and I had made a decision to focus in photography. So I think I can mute my screen. I'm trying to mute my screen. I don't know. Let me try that. Sorry, I'm just trying to. Just gonna go back to the photos. So, because I wanted to really continue as a photographer, and I wanted to learn more about photography, so I made the decision to try look for opportunities to be able to go outside of Afghanistan and study more photography. I was lucky because I knew a Canadian photographer in Afghanistan, and I talked to her, and she helped me to get a scholarship to go to Canada. And I was accepted for a 2-year photojournalism program at Loyalist College in Canada. But before going to Canada, because I had to pass a TOEFL exam, and it was very difficult at the time, so I continued to focus on the problems that Afghan women were facing on that chapter of my photography. As you see in this image, this is part of that chapter, which shows the day-to-day problems that Afghan women face in Afghanistan. This is a young girl, 4-year-old girl, in her mother put her in her engagement outfit for photography. She was engaged to her 7-year-old cousin, because her aunt didn't have a daughter and wanted to have a daughter, and they got her engaged to her son. And we did an interview, and it was a story, and we asked the parents that if she grew up and refused to refuse this engagement, what you gonna do? And it was that she has to go with the marriage. And of course, one of the other issues that I photographed at the time was, oh, sorry, what? Hold on, I'm hearing my own voice.
We hear you pretty well.
But I'm hearing my own voice as well. Oh, now it's better. Thank you. So one of the other problems that Afghan women were facing that I focused at the time was this self-immolation. Self-immolation is happening a lot in western part of Afghanistan, especially in Herat province, where women try to commit suicide by putting themselves on fire, or even in some cases the families will try to put the women in fire in terms of teaching others, or in terms of trying to silence their voices. This is a woman who was married and was having a very hard time with her in-laws families, and because they were refusing and they were giving her a very hard time, so she wanted to actually make a point to scare them that she's gonna put herself on fire if they're not gonna stop. But accidentally she got the fire, and then her entire body got burned. The other issue is that Afghan women every day face is the fact that they are being beaten. Whenever they try to raise their voices or refuse something, they get beaten. And as you see in this image, I was taking pictures in a refugee compound in western part of Kabul. I think she refused something to her cousin, and because she refused, so the cousin start beating her. And as you see in this image, in between those beatings, she was beating, and everything was like a very normal around, and she was crying. Of course, she didn't listen. I was there, and she stood, but it is like one of the issues, unfortunately, that still even these days Afghan women are facing when they are refusing, or when they are trying to stand for something that they want. And this is a picture of women in prison. In 2010, I was working with a group of filmmakers, and we were trying to make a documentary on the women in justice, and we were visiting several prisons in Kabul, Parwan, and this picture is in Kabul prison. And during the film, at the time, I was also working as a second filmmaker. I was helping them, but also I was taking images, and we were listening to the stories of women in prison. Unfortunately, a lot of women goes to prison in most cases for reasons that in other countries, in most countries, I would say, around the world, that none of the women will go to prison. For instance, if they refuse for a marriage or something, and they try to run away, even though they say that they can run away to an organization or the police station, or somewhere that they can be protected, but still they end up in most cases in prisons. And one of the things that they were they were all talking about was that the moment that they were entering a police station and they were asked to give their first statements, they would start being judged. And they were even, some of them mentioned to us that they were told they were told that if you were a good woman, why would you end up in such situation? It means you have done something that you're here. So this was one of the biggest issue that to be realized that Afghan women unfortunately are facing, and they go to prison, and then they are in the prison, and without, most of them without having any lawyers. They are just there, and their cases is there. Sometimes even their cases, decisions are made behind them. And like this woman, for instance, the image that you see, this woman was raped by one of her neighbors, and then later she was brought to a police station, and then when they took the statement, they told her that you're going to just go to this center for now, and then your case will be okay. But they took her to the prison, and then she ended up spending a lot of time in the prison. She gave birth to a child which she gave away because she didn't want to keep the child in the prison, I think. And then, but she was still in the prison. She was raped, and then she was in the prison. And of course, many women, I would say that would get beaten, but some will get, in some cases, there will be cases of very extreme violence against women. This is a woman that her nose was cut by her husband. And this is not the only case. Unfortunately, there've been many cases like this, that where they will cut their nose, they will cut different part of their bodies, and they will cut their ears. And even I have a picture. I don't have it in the selection. I have a picture that you will see the picture of how they behaved women sometimes in Afghanistan. Another things that we work, actually at the time that I was at AP working, was a story with it on prostitution in Afghanistan. A subject very sensitive that no one really wanna to talk about it. Through an organization, a local organization, we were able to see a very big group of women. Actually, I should not say prostitute. I told myself to stop saying prostitute. I would say sex workers. We met this very big group of women, and we interviewed them, and we talked to them about why they are in this situation, and listening to their stories. And their story was heartbreaking, because in most of the cases, they would say that because they are uneducated and because they can't work, do any other jobs, so they have to come to this work. And sometimes they even, I remember one woman that she would go for like maybe a few pieces of bread because of her kids. And unfortunately, most of these women, their lives are very in danger, to be honest. And only that organization at that year was trying to help them and teach them some skills like tailoring and some other skills, so that they can start working on some, start making some clothes, or other kind of embroidery or something like that, so that they can continue their life with such things. These stories, actually, after we did that story, I tried to focus more on this story for several years until 2013. But unfortunately, each time I tried to go and visit them, they asked for money. And I said, I'm sorry, I can't give you money, but I'm willing to hear, to come and listen to your stories and to take your pictures, and hopefully that those pictures and your stories will raise some awareness, so that people will start helping you more. So the story after that, I was never able to continue, but hopefully one day someone will pick, or maybe myself, do this, because these women, I know that it's still happening, not just in Kabul and several provinces of Afghanistan, and they really need some help, because they are not doing it willingly. They are forced in a way to do. So yeah, these were the images that I was focusing mainly before going to Canada, before I went there and I studied. When I went to Canada, in the second year of my studying, I won my first award by National Geographic by All World Film Festival, National Geographic Society. And for that award, I traveled to USA, and there was an exhibition in Europe, and I traveled to Europe. And when I traveled to USA for my award, I was able to meet so many people from photography field, editors and influencer, many different photographers. And also when I went to Europe, I was able to meet a lot of people from my exhibition and see the reaction of people to our exhibition. And even when I was in Canada, because I got a full scholarship to study in Canada and return all the time in the weekends when I was not going to the school, one day of my weekend, usually I was giving presentation to different groups and communities in Canada. And with all those reaction and everything, I realized something. I realized that that the image of Afghan women being presented in the Western world is from a foreigner perspective. And even when I look at my photograph, I saw a huge influence of what was the demand in Western world for photography, especially when it comes to Afghan women. So I was actually, as an Afghan woman, I was like, wait a minute, there is some more. I felt that something is missing. I felt that that the world needs to see maybe like something that I felt that from an Afghan perspective, maybe from an Afghan female perspective. So after I finished my study in Canada in 2009, unlike my family, my friends' advice that they were giving me to stay in Canada and continue my life in Canada, I decided to come back to Afghanistan. I wanted to come back to Afghanistan because I wanted to work deeper and try to show a bigger image of the life of Afghan women to the Western world. So I came to Afghanistan and I start photographing beside the problems. Of course, I still photograph the problems that Afghan women face even today, because the problem is not finished. And unfortunately, these days, it is very difficult times for, which later I will talk about it, for women in Afghanistan, and especially for women who are working in media in Afghanistan. So I try to go and show the life inside the houses of Afghan women, the jobs that they are doing, and how their life.
Gonca bu çocuk düşerse bak kadın gösteriyor.
So the different kind of jobs, even some of the jobs that were at some point banned for women. So I for some time I work on that chapter, which shows the some women breaking taboos and trying to bring or try to go for what they wanted to in their lives, and like see police women and women driving, women becoming a photographer, maybe like me, and sports women, the interest that they had in sports. Because as I entered their houses, I realized that there is interest in Afghan women for a different, for everything, like any other women around the world. I realized that in the image that is showing is different. But when I entered the houses, I realized that no, wait a minute, maybe some stuff will be different, but so much can still be the same. I saw so much connection, and those was like their interest, their standing, their no matter from which stage, I would say, but it exists. So that's why I focus on the jobs that Afghan women doing. And another part was for me is the celebrations that Afghan women were celebrating, from weddings to engagements. I wanted to see how that is. As you see in this image, is Afghan women choosing from Western models. I don't know which model it is. Is that they are making, picking up their makeup for an engagement day, a party that they were going. And sometimes, I mean, I have to say something about this image, because most of the time I show this image, everyone thinks that this is like an arranged marriage or something. Actually, this is not an arranged marriage, it is a love marriage, but they've been celebrating it very hard, and this is taking the last minute of their wedding, although like in the background they are orphan and their life is very difficult. You can see that the road ahead of them and their eyes, but yeah, so this was the very end of their celebration. And of course, as you still hear the news in Afghanistan, that there is the war is going on in Afghanistan, unfortunately, and day by day it's getting really bad. But even in this war, the life continues. This is the image of a couple that I photographed. It's in the Afghan Darlaman Palace in a western part of Kabul, a palace that was destroyed during the civil war in Afghanistan. And this couple, they wanted to take their wedding images inside this Darlaman Palace. And yes, so when I returned back to Afghanistan in 2019, I finished my education, and in 2010 I returned back to Afghanistan. I not only that I wanted to go and show the life from inside the houses, celebrations, and the jobs that Afghan women doing, but also one thing I was I find I got inspired for another chapter, which I call it actually the younger generation of Afghanistan. I found this group of very young women in big cities, especially that with quite different, even to myself and to the past generation. They are very different generation. I have to see, even with our Z generation right now. They are not just there to change their own lives. They are there to bring change for others. And I was very inspired by so many of these groups that how they are standing, even if times the problems will take them to a shelter, like this women that had to live in a shelter because of the activities, social activities that they had. Yeah, but of course, still, I mean, the problems were happening and continues for women in Afghanistan. But yes, women are sometimes, I mean, they were like making taboos, breaking taboos and standing. And in this photo, is Afghan women broke a very big taboo in Afghanistan by deciding to carry a body of Farkhunda. I don't know how many people is familiar with Farkhunda's story. A few years ago, Farkhunda was killed in the center of Kabul. A woman who was beaten, who was burned and killed in just a few, not very far from Kabul Palace, in a presidential place in Kabul. She was killed. And this really, and the fact that the reaction of Afghan women, as you see in this photo, they didn't let any Afghan man to carry her coffin. So they carried the coffin, which was breaking a big tattoo. It was first time for Afghan women to do such a thing in Afghanistan. And of course, many demonstrations for human rights, for women's rights, for many different reasons. I was very inspired because even for myself, I mean, like I lived my entire life during Civil War. The first memory that I remember from in my life is associated with war, unfortunately. I think sometimes I think of myself as like I carried the history of past several years of war in Afghanistan, because I was born in Afghanistan and I was raised in Afghanistan, and I'm living my entire life in Afghanistan. Basically, from communism regime to the civil war to Taliban to after Taliban, and right now what is happening. So I'm witnessing it. And for me, my life as a child, which the first memory is actually war, unfortunately, to all those times that we had to sometimes even leave our homes because of fighting during civil war, or to the Taliban regime to be beaten in the street, to be not allowed to go to school, or sit in your home thinking that any minute someone will come and kill me. To come to this point, for me, it was something very different and very inspiring. So I really try at the time to follow these groups, their activities, from demonstrations to programs to gatherings to everything. And yes, this was one of the programs that they organized. There was music and different activities happening in that program. And this is a very young Afghan rapper. Which for these girls, like they were emerging with different kind of towards sports, towards art, towards even politics, business, and many different areas that very unusual. So as I was working in this young generation of Afghan women from the time that I returned back, and the other chapters that it's inside their houses and the jobs that they were doing, I also was working as a freelance photographer. And as a freelance photographer for different organizations and NGOs and magazines and newspapers, so that I could financially be able to work in my personal projects. Because in Afghanistan, as Manu Chair knows, there's not much for photography, unfortunately, yet. Photography is very young for among Afghans, and because of that, it's so hard to actually find a market for your work in Afghanistan. So I started working for since 2010, freelancing for different NGOs like Save the Children, UN, UNDP, and many IRC, many different organizations. So I will go for assignment for them whenever they were needed, and then work for them and save some money, and then use that saving to become able to travel to different provinces of Afghanistan, or even to work in my personal projects in Afghanistan, in Kabul. But in 2015, so many things actually changed in my personal life and career-wise too. I always had one idea in my head that I wanted to work on it, but to be honest, never had the courage to start it. But in 2015, I did something. Again, unlike many advices from my family, from my friends, that they were telling me, Farzana, you have to leave the country. Day by day, it is getting very dangerous. You have to leave the country. So I said, no, I don't want to leave. I went to Canada to study. I travel a lot, actually, also for my exhibitions. And I said, I went to Canada to study, to come and work as a photographer, because I believe that for me, it is important for international media, photographers, writers to go somewhere different, to see for a fresh eye. But also, I think it's very important to have some people locally to share stories, because I think this angle of the stories is same as important, as much as important as the other side of it. So I said, no, I don't want to leave Afghanistan. I want to continue. I decided to buy my first apartment. So in 2015, I bought my first apartment. And when I bought my first apartment, I felt different. I felt so settled and ready to start my next project. And that next project is, I call it 100 Afghan Women. It is to photograph 100 Afghan women inside and outside Afghanistan. And the reason that I wanted to do this is because I think even with the images that I was taking, I had taken before, I felt that change that I wanted to bring in Western media, in terms of Afghan women images and Afghan women lives, I was not satisfied. So that's why I start this 100 Afghan Women project, which is photography, as I say, to photograph hundreds of Afghan women inside and outside Afghanistan. These women are from different ages, from different backgrounds. Some lives between Afghanistan and outside, some lives completely inside Afghanistan, and some live completely outside Afghanistan. I thought that if we want to talk about Afghan women, this is something needed to be photographed, something very deep and very big in order to bring. I felt like it's not, even with the pictures I took, I thought maybe it's not enough. I need more images. So the way I work in this project is a documentary style. So I visit these women several times. Each time I spent time with them, nights, days with them. I follow them during their work. I follow them in their inside their homes. I follow them in their social life and everything, big changes in their lives, like graduations or some other changes in their life. And there's three reasons actually that I want to do this. The first one that I already mentioned, that I really I'm hoping that this body of work will change the image of Afghan women in the Western world. And the second reason that I want to do this is because I travel a lot to different provinces of Afghanistan. I go to many different areas, to very rural areas, and everywhere I go in Afghanistan and I see, I ask women what you want to become. They say a teacher, a doctor, which I respect this job so much. As you see, I already have a picture of teacher in my presentation, but I felt during this year, I felt that there's something missing, and I felt that there's this connection between these women, Afghan women, that they are, I mean, they're almost every one of them are like role models with these young generation, because they don't have access so much. Either if the things that they have access is from Western world, which is sometimes it's so difficult for them to make connection with those role models, women from Western world. So something that needed to be from within, inside Afghanistan. So the second reason is this, that with this documentary project, I'm hoping that there will be data created and available for Afghan younger generations in the next couple of years, so that they can look at, to be inspired, to connect themselves, so that they can choose their future in different, because if we want to think about changes, there has to be in every sector, every section, there has to be women and men both has to be involved. And the third reason that I want to work in this project, the 100 Afghan Women project, is because I wanted to document the life of Afghan women in a way that would never be erased. Unfortunately, in these past several decades of war, one of, the majority, Afghan women were the ones that actually affected the most, lost the most. Every single political change in Afghanistan affected very hugely the life of Afghan women. As some of you, if you're following right now the news about Afghanistan, I'm sure you will exactly notice what I'm talking about, because every single political change, which we had so many in the past decades in Afghanistan, affected the life of Afghan women. But unfortunately, they are not as recorded in the history as should have. So that's why I want to do this project, photography, that so that it will stay forever there, so that Afghan women become part of the history as they should have been in the history of Afghanistan. So as I talk, this is basically what I've been doing as a photographer in terms of taking pictures. But beside taking pictures and working as a freelancer, another thing that I have started since 2010 when I returned back from Canada is to focus a little bit more towards helping other, other younger generation of Afghanistan who are interested in photography. Because when I went to Canada and I studied in Canada, I realized that also that photography is so young in Afghanistan for us, and there's so much that we need to work towards and so much we need to learn and we need to share. So when I came back to Afghanistan, besides taking working on in the photography, taking picture of Afghan women, I also wanted to share whatever I have learned in Canada with the other photographers in Afghanistan. My original plan was to really just hold a 2-week workshop and teach whatever I have learned in Canada and my experience, my realization and everything. So, but when I start consulting with people around, with the photographers, I realized that, oh my God, I need to do so much. So I end up with a project for 2 years minimum to start with, the things that I wanted to do and the things that they needed to be done. So the 2-year project, I was like, these are at least the basic things that has to be done in Afghanistan. And at the time, I didn't have any organization of my own. So I looked for some local organization and I found one local organization who agreed to work on that project with me. And it took me 4 years to find funders for my project. And the project was to actually do a research in the history of photography in Afghanistan, which we did for the first time. And right now, actually, it is being used in Kabul University of Afghanistan in a photo department, that research. And but also to train some photographers in intermediate level and also in advanced level. And besides that, we realized with I was working with different other organizations, almost like 10 organizations towards that project, and there was a huge demand and need for reviewing the copyright law in Afghanistan, which we did during the year of 2014 and 2015. But when I was working on that project, I faced a lot of problems because my goal was to really make sure that the project is that the entire focus is on the programs that we wanted to work on, but the organization was not a specific organization in terms of photography. So I was having a lot of problems with the people that I was working on that organization, trying to convince them why this is important, why that's important, why we have to do this, why we have to do this, why we have to focus on this. So first, second, third milestone, I work with that organization, and unfortunately for the fourth milestone, I had to report the organization, which I end up, the supporter end up closing the project, but I had no choice but to report because I was having really problem with that organization, and they did something that was beyond, it was a corruption, and I couldn't go with that. But that experience made me to realize that that if I want to continue with my teaching or other ideas that I had also to help other photographers in Afghanistan, there is a need for an organization that would work specifically for photography in Afghanistan. So that's why I decided to establish Afghanistan Photographer Association. In 2016, we were able to register Afghanistan Photographer Association with the financial support of actually Afghanistan Pulitzer winner photographer Masood Hosseini, who supported me financially for 1 year to establish the association, but also in the establishment of association. So after 1 year, when the organization was established and the financial support finished, I realized that in Afghanistan, if you want to work in long-term projects and projects that mostly need a base and that requires a lot of time to see the result, but are very necessary and fundamental to have. There is not much interest in the international community for supporting such projects, and that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to create project based on what is needed in terms of photography in Afghanistan. So I realized I needed to find a source of income, so where I can support the association. I can hold these programs, and that was at the time 2017, and then I was like, okay, what I can do that that will generate an income for us. And I come up with this idea because at the same time, I knew that there is not much professional lab studios in Afghanistan. I realized that there is something needed. I always had a problem printing my image in Afghanistan. I said, there is something needed, and there is this that may, if I create that, maybe I will, through that, I will be able to support financially the association. So I start studying a little bit about the business to build a very, very small business, a printing lab and a photography studio, and hopefully in the future we have plans for galleries. With this business, so basically it was registered in 2019, and in 2020 we were able to work, and through this business I was able to actually create jobs for photographers also, so but at the same time save some money that will go, which now we're gonna use towards our admin cost and maybe some programs for Afghanistan Photographer Association. And I hope that with this situation right now, we could be able to continue the same way towards next year and the year after that for the business and also for the association, because for the association Afghanistan, we have very good and strategic plan where we will work. We are planning to work towards advocacy for photography and photographers inside Afghanistan, because in Afghanistan, unfortunately, in most cases, Afghan photographers' pictures are used without even crediting them, and also to be able to train Afghan photographers and the ones that they are already taking picture, providing them with more skilled and more advanced workshops so that they can be connected to the world, but at the same time training a younger generation so that it continues. And of course, as you, I'm a female photographer, and sometimes when it comes to photography, unfortunately in Afghanistan, the number of female photographers are very low. So sometimes I really focus on a specific classes for girls and women in photography. These are images from some of our activities from association and trainings that we held. In this training, it was with the Internews collaboration with Internews, where I train, and actually after that training, the income of that training enable me to, this is from some of the gatherings that we hold for photographers in Kabul. So yeah, with the association, we also work with different organizations with the, providing them support in terms of organizing or implementing exhibitions for them. And yeah, with that training, as I mentioned, and then I went to another subject. We were able to, with the after that, we were able to develop, to build a very small gallery in Kabul. I have to say that this is maybe I can say that this is the most I mean, like well-made gallery for exhibitions in Kabul right now, which took us several months to build it. It is just below our office where we have Afghanistan Photographer Association. So there's a couple of other things I would like to talk also about it. I don't know how much time I have.
Yeah, we just have a few minutes, Farzana, and we have a few comments from people to share before we go into our slideshow.
Okay, then I will be very quickly about them. I just want to point them out. I won't go in details. So as I work, I mean, it's been 18 years that I've been either taking pictures as a photographer or trying to establish something or try to teach photography. Of course, there's always problems. And the main problems, especially since last year it started, is security for media workers, especially for women working in media. In the past couple of months, we lost a big number of men and women working in media. Last week, 3 women were gunshot in Jalalabad, one of the provinces of Afghanistan. And I have to say that I'm having also a very hard time because it's very difficult right now to move and to work and with the situation going on. But beside the security, there is a couple of other issues that we are facing as a photographer in Afghanistan. The other issue is lack of international interest these days in Afghanistan. Unfortunately, it's not as it used to be, and also for us, it's very difficult to compete with those who are has a very huge big network and living in those countries. I think most of Afghan photographers can't travel, even getting visa for them to go to participate to a program in Europe or USA is impossible. Very rare, very few are able to do that, which this really, I mean, reduce the opportunity for them to really have their work published. And beside that, of course, there's always issues sometimes with other photographers that come to Afghanistan. I mean, last year, this 100 Afghan Women project was, I don't know what to say, was almost duplicated by another photographer, and I had 2 months very hard work after she refused to bring change in the project because I said that this is something I'm doing, and what you are doing is you have to bring change to your project, and she refused, and I had to talk to the organization that was supporting her in order to bring the change. So these are the other, some of the issues that I just want to point it before we go to the question, and now we can go to the questions.